All right, what's up everyone? Today is supposed to be Eufaula day 2 of practice, right? But here's the thing. We're gonna talk about spinnerbaits first. We're gonna talk about this spinnerbait in particular and ones like it and why I was using it, okay? So I kind of interrupted our practice days to kind of get into this. If you wanna still kind of hear about day 2, stay after the spinnerbait talk and I'll kind of go through day 2. That way you can kind of keep track of what's going on from day 1 of practice, day 2, tomorrow, and then the tournament itself, and then we'll get back on the road to Ray Roberts, okay? Now, I finally did figure something out where I started getting some bites at the end of the day on this spinnerbait right here. Why do I want to talk about this spinnerbait? Well, this spinnerbait has a lot of history behind it in the sense of I've been trying to recreate this spinnerbait for years with Strike King. In the sense of this is the spinnerbait I've thrown for a long time with them, and now they just made it. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know they started making it. Like I found it, I saw it, but it wasn't until just now that I actually looked at the packaging. And here's the packaging, let me show you. All right, here's the packaging. Looks like the same thing. I just saw 3/4 and went with it. This is the bottom dweller. This is what they call the finesse, which I was shocked they called it finesse. I wouldn't have called it finesse, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know. It is what it is, right? But the bottom dweller, which was this is the spinnerbait I've thrown forever, right? I always liked a heavier spinnerbait. We're gonna get into the heavier spinnerbait. This is my box of spinnerbait stuff, okay? It looks crazy because I go through here and I keep tons of spinnerbaits in here, right, of all kinds. Some of them don't have skirts on here. You notice I have tons of blades in here. I have spinnerbaits. I have 1 3/8 ounce spinnerbaits. I have all kinds of stuff. I'm explaining. I've done a video on this before, on the spinnerbaits. If you look over here, tons of spinnerbaits in here. Older spinnerbaits. When I say I have just wads of spinnerbait stuff that I mess with. I know it looks crazy, right? There's not a spinnerbait that looks like that has this blade. I'm switching out blades all the time. I got some good looking stuff in here I need to take out. Some hooks. All right, so what am I doing with these spinnerbaits? Before I go, I'm not gonna go into all the things I do with spinnerbaits. Just this one in particular. I like a heavy spinnerbait. If you notice, live scope has kind of changed the way people fish. I would say most of our baits now with live scope are slower, right? They're slower because we're putting them in a place where we're not getting a reaction strike out of them anymore. We're like hovering it in front of their face now, right? We're putting it right in front of their face. That's what live scope does. But in the past, we always try to get a reaction bite. Now, reaction bites usually come from fast, speed, getting something so the fish come out to eat. Whereas live scope's more of putting the bait right in front of their head, right? Well, I always wanted fast baits. No one ever told me that. That's just the way I looked at it. That's just what I saw. The faster I reeled a crankbait, the faster I worked things. Other than like throwing a worm or something like that, it seemed like the speed mattered. Then, as I got older, I got around Phil Marks from Strike King and talked with Kevin. It was funny. Kevin does the same thing. So if you look at Van Dam and his spinnerbait setups, if you notice, they're always, you almost never see him slow roll a spinnerbait. I'm not saying he doesn't, but you rarely see him slow roll a spinnerbait. He's always throwing a spinnerbait fast. He's wanting it to move through the water. It's why we have these spinnerbaits with smaller blades called burners and things like that. He's trying to reel it fast. He don't want a good look at it, right? He doesn't want them to see it. I'm the same way. I want a spinnerbait that I can move fast. Part of it's for reaction. Part of it's because when you go to new lakes or you go fish areas where you're trying to cover a lot of water to find fish, I want to be able to move faster than someone else. So as you're sitting there throwing a spinnerbait real slow, having to work it like inch by inch and reel it with not a lot of turns on the reel, I'm able to move that spinnerbait because I think I can still get just as many bites and cover more water. It's just being more efficient. So I've always taken a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait, okay? They're bottom dweller, because I love this spinnerbait, and I would go put bigger blades on it. That's what I did. So all that setup is sometimes I couldn't find bigger blades. Sometimes I'd have to go buy bigger blades. And if you see in there, a lot of times I would take, I'll get this for you. So here we have a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait and a 1 3/8 ounce spinnerbait. They're both bottom dwellers. Notice the blades on them. The 1 3/8 is that one? Okay. This one has bigger blades than this one. And so I sometimes wanted bigger blades because I'm still fishing dirty water. I'm not trying to get it down. I'm still fishing in 2 to 3, 4 foot of water, sometimes just 2. But I want a big profile, something I can move it fast by. A lot of times I was throwing it around bushes and around like cypress trees, willow trees, things like that. And I'm trying to like burn it through there, a big profiled bait that moves water that I can reel fast. Now all those things don't really go together, okay? The only way you can make that go together is by getting a bigger spinnerbait, a heavier spinnerbait. And I got used to that. Caught a lot of giants doing it that way. And if I wanted to go throw, 5,000 trees that day, chances are if I had to go slower, I'd only get to go cover 3,000 trees, right? I'm gonna cover more water and be more efficient with this bigger bait. Strike King now makes the spinnerbait with the bigger blades on there already. And I'm like, oh, perfect. So that's the spinnerbait I was throwing, okay? That's why I think it's a big deal. This is, did I even bring one? Yeah, it's their 3/4 ounce spinnerbait, but it says finesse on there. It doesn't say bottom dweller, finesse. So that's the actual spinnerbait right there. Now, what did I have it on? I have it on my new rod. Now this is one of my prototype ones, but still, same thing. I also have my swim jig on this rod. Same rod. I'm getting ready for another tournament. This is my sight fishing, frogging, swim jig, spinnerbaiting. Spinnerbait rod. I throw my spinnerbait on this rod. It's a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait. It's hard to throw a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait on a rod on a lot of guys' rods because their spinnerbait rods are more designed for 3/8 and 1/2 ounce. I rarely throw those kind of spinnerbaits. So this is the rod I throw it on. So if you notice, that's what I have it on. Watching fishing now it's so, what happens in fishing, what I see is everyone sees someone do something and it's almost like they take it to the extreme, right? So they see a certain way someone fishes and that's the way the trend goes. And if you're not in that trend, it's like you're doing something wrong. Crankbaits were, you had to get a softer rod, a glass rod, or whatever rod, and you had to go from 15 down to 12 down to 10. Like you had to keep getting the line size smaller because that's what people said. Oh, I can get it deeper. I can do this. I can do that. And I was going, yeah, that didn't make sense to me. And so that's why I can't tell you how many people have come back to me and told me like, man, I've watched your videos. You always talk about throwing 20-pound line on crankbaits, like 6XDs and 5XDs and things like that. I'm like, yeah. They're like, yeah, I switched. And they're like, man, I can't tell the difference. And I'll never break off hardly. And it's just easier. I'm like, I know. Same thing with this. I throw 20-pound to 22-pound line on my spinnerbait. Why? Because I can. This, when I swim jig, I sometimes fish with braid, but most of the time I throw a swim jig a lot in open water. I throw 25. I can throw 25 on my spinnerbait. I have a rod that I can bow them up. I mean, I can hit them hard with this. I'm not gonna lose them on a spinnerbait. You just don't hardly lose any. And this is the rod. I still have it on my 300, right? Because what did I always tell y'all? I throw my 300 if it's braid or anything over 20-pound test line, because I can fit so much line on there. I saw a video the other day of a guy who's well respected, but he was talking about the line size he throws, and he was like, man, I guess the reels he has doesn't have a spool big enough. So he's like, yeah, I have to go down to 40 and 50 pound braid because 60 pound braid takes up too much spool. Not with this, it doesn't. So I like throwing 60. I'll never break off 60. I can break 40. I can break 40 pound braid. But this is the rod I was throwing. This is the reel. That's the spinnerbait. Like I said, it's a couple reasons. Covering tons and tons of water. I don't know where these fish are at. I've been to this lake. This is my third time now. And I've never thrown a spinnerbait in the bushes. And the water's 4 foot high. I'm having to cover tons and tons of water. It's dirty. It's cloudy. I need a big profile, big blades, move a lot of water. And that's what I'm doing. And catching them. Now, that's the end of the spinnerbait talk. Sort of. We're going to go right into Eufaula. Here's the problem with Eufaula on day 2. This happens every once in a while to me. It rained a lot. We had to come in for a couple hours when a storm passed through. I don't know if I forgot to transfer the footage over or whatever it was. But here's what happened. I went back out there the next morning. Okay? So the last y'all saw was Eufaula day 1, me ending the day throwing a spinnerbait. And I like to say, when I was throwing that spinnerbait, you see me catch 4-pounders and you see me catch 14 inchers, 12 inchers. Still boated up, still didn't lose any, right? Like everything was perfect. Like, just saying, and people are like, oh, is that rod too heavy? No, it's fine. It'll get a 12 incher in and a 4-pounder in around bushes. It's the rod set up for that, the way we made it. So went back out there. I catch 2 in the first hour, 2 over 3. I'm sitting here going, this is gonna work. This is gonna work. My buddy was practicing with me. I was like, hey, just flip bushes. I want to see if flipping bushes is the thing. I know it's good. I know you can catch fish doing it. I want to see which one's better. And once again, I'm having to cover water to find. I know where. I now know where at least 2 sections of fish are where I think I can get bit. I want to see if this other stuff's any good. So he flipped all that time, never had a bite until we finally got. It was about a couple hours in. His first, I think he had a bite, missed it, or couldn't have caught it. And his second bite was a 5 or 6 pounder. It was a giant. And I was going, oh, that's interesting. We kept on going. He ended up having 1 or 2 more bites throughout the day. I was like, hey, you got to shake him off after that. We figured out that they were on some trees. I think those were spawning fish. So there was bushes in the water and trees up shallower when you could actually get to them. The problem is water would go on forever in those bushes. So I'm only getting to hit certain bushes, and they're groups of bushes together. Sometimes I could throw in them. Sometimes I could only hit the outside of them, whatever it was. But there were certain trees. I don't even know what kind of trees they are. They were just like real trees. When I say real trees, they weren't trees that would be in the water. They're trees that are out of the water. The water's just high. A lot of times they get on those trees and spawn on them. Not those particular trees, just any other trees, because when it floods, sometimes the ground has grass, like regular bank grass, types of hay grass, things like that. They don't have to make a bed in that stuff. They can just find some hard bottom and go make a bed on it. Sometimes those trees don't have that grass growing around them, the root system. It creates at least like maybe that much area where they can spawn on, right? Same thing sometimes in bushes on the base of the bush for the same reason. Problem is there's thousands of those trees and you can only get to about 1% of them. So, and even on that 1%, they're still not on very many of them, like very, very few. But that's where we went. That's where we went. I will say this. I had 8 to 12 bites of big swirls or knocking slack in my spinnerbait. Normally I'd say that was bass. I did catch a white bass or 2. I eventually started catching a catfish or 2. I don't think they were white bass that were hitting it. I'm saying some of them could have been bass. Some of them could have been bass on bet. I don't know. And I had a hook on there, and it was frustrating. And it was weird because the first couple bass hit, I only had those hit. I only had the bass hit, and I caught them. But it could have been catfish. It just could have been. And there's But like later on in the day, I had like a 25-pound catfish get up underneath my frog, my popping perch when I was throwing it. And I caught 1 or 2 catfish. So everything was up in the bushes. I don't know. I was kind of thinking, hoping there would be bass, and the more I threw it, the more I'd catch them. I'm not sure. But the spinnerbait bite did die at some point in time. I still got bit, but I wasn't catching them. So I was like, okay, I think it's still a shad spawn deal up until a certain point. So I was starting to get an idea of what I was going to go do. The rain hit. We had to come in. Once we get back out there, I'm like, I'm not going to go do that again. I know what I'm going to go do. Let's go somewhere else. I hadn't planned on going anywhere else, but let's go somewhere else for the last couple hours of the day. We went in this area and we started flipping. Just flipping up on the bank. Going super, super slow. I've caught them here before in the springtime. Frogging and swim jigging and doing different things. That's where we went. We got bit. We got bit quickly. We didn't have a lot of time because storms were rolling in, and we had 4 or 5 bites, and I said, all right, we're going to go do this all the next day. We're going to go do 2 things the next day. We're going to go hit some main lake stuff, like rocks and things like that, and then go do this. That was our game plan for day 3. Day 3 is going to be a short day. I do have all that on film, but we got some things going against us. We got a lot of storms coming. We got maybe more rain, and we think the lake's going to come up. That's going to change everything. Okay, so that's what happened. Stay tuned for day 3. We'll get that up there of practice and see how much it's going to change, and it's going to change a lot. All right, stay tuned.